And the hits keep coming with Joshua Harris. Hey everyone, this is Kevin the Entrepreneur. Welcome to my vlogging channel. Here's where I talk about the world, the universe, and I guess I'm kind of doing a follow-up video on the whole Joshua Harris thing. That little editorial that I did, which I felt it would be safe to just share that story because no one's ever going to watch it. Yeah, over 1,000 people have watched it. And so when I read this news story, it was kind of like, well, I guess I'm going to talk about this. So let's go over here. For those of you who watch my regular Entrepreneur channel, this format here will not seem unusual. But let's take a look at this article from The Friendly Atheist. And for the record, yes, there were Christian websites that could have easily read this opinion from. But I think given what's going on, it's interesting to be looking at this from the other side, if you will, because for the record, I am not an atheist, I'm a Christian. So anyway, the headline says, Christian movie distributor drops Josh Harris film after his change of faith. Over the past couple months, Joshua Harris, the purity-promoting author of I Kissed Dating Goodbye, has announced he's separating from his wife, apologizing to the LGBTQ community, and admitting he was not a Christian. It's a change that's shaken many in the evangelical world. And all of that happened after Harris tried to walk back some of his pro-abstinence rhetoric. Well, here's the thing. He wasn't actually against being abstinent. What he did walk back was a lot of the draconian laws that his book had put into place. Things like, well, here's a good example. Here's a good example. And I kind of talked about this a little bit in the other video. Like, one of the rules that I vehemently disagreed with was... I agreed with, date with a purpose. That's a good thought, If you have no intention of marrying, I don't know why you would want to be in a relationship just to have fun. Come on, really. That's not healthy for anyone involved. I agreed with that. Then it's like, okay, get the parents involved and, ask the daughter's parents if it's okay to pursue your daughter. I thought that was completely crazy, in my opinion. I mean, especially if you're an adult. And I don't know how that would be working out right now. Because, for example, everyone in my family loves Katie. Katie's family is a little bit more mixed on me. I think her mom likes me, and I think the oldest sister and her husband likes me. The brother doesn't like me. The younger sister doesn't like me. I'm not sure where the dad stands, to be perfectly honest. So, if I were to follow the rules of I Kissed Dating Goodbye, then me and Katie could probably not get married because her dad might not like me as much as I would hope. So, the thing is, Joshua Harris was walking back rules. He wasn't walking back on the absence thing. At the end of, the documentary, the I Survived, I Kissed Dating Goodbye that they're talking about, he actually was still in favor of abstinence. However, he wanted to clarify that just because you were not abstinent until you got married, it did not mean you were less saved. It didn't mean you were damaged goods. That was the image that he was putting forth in that book, which got so many people stressed. So he was walking some of that back, but he wasn't for, not being absent. He was still for it, at least at the time he was. He was walking about some of his draconian, man-made, law-abiding things where it's like, hey, if you do this sin, you are now damaged in the eyes of the Lord. Not biblical at all. But anyway... Let's continue. In 2016, Harris seemed to apologize for his infamous book. Some of his old fans felt his apology was insincere, in part because while he said his book would no longer be printed or reprinted, he hadn't necessarily changed his views. Well, that's not true. He had changed his views on certain aspects. It didn't mean everything in that book was bad, just a few things. Granted, they were a few major things, and for that reason, I would not recommend anyone read the book. I mean, unless you were married and adult and you kind of wanted to see what his argument was. But I think he made some very poor arguments in many respects. So that's why I think it's a good thing he discontinued the book. But let's continue. That was evident in a documentary he produced called I Survived, I Kissed Dating Goodbye, in which Harris spoke with people who grew up on his ideas and talked about the harm his ideas caused, without ever saying those ideas were wrong. It wasn't until late last year when that began to change publicly anyway. Well, again, he was saying some of those things were wrong. If he truly felt that there was nothing wrong in the book, he would have kept it published. He would have left it in print. He would have continued to collect the royalty checks. So yeah, I think he did walk back. But there's another twist. The distributor of his film will no longer include it in their library, effectively acting as if it doesn't exist. Exploration Films said this was a result of Harris's recent confessions and what they called a lack of transparency from Josh, where they said, unfortunately, Josh did not tip off his film team partners of the surprising changes before his public post, nor how this would change our company's distribution efforts of the film he had worked with us on to promote, said Stephen Penn on behalf of Exploration Films. Personally, we still wish Josh the best. We know he is searching for answers, but due to the lack of transparency from Josh, we have no other choice but to halt promotion of the film. Hundreds of DVDs have already been returned as a result of his statements. Now, there's a couple things in this statement we need to keep in mind. First of all, yeah, he wasn't very transparent about what his views were. Now, I'm not saying he was lying. Maybe he felt he was saved when the movie wrapped up. I mean, the movie ends, and by the way, it's interesting because I saw the movie after he came out like he was no longer Christian. I saw that it was available on Amazon Prime. I was at my parents' house, and it was like, okay, I guess it's now or never. I watched it, but personally, my opinion of the movie, it was very good. It was very good. I think it offered some good, healthy debate, not only on relationships, but, it's a very real and honest examination of like, hey, I wrote this thing when I was 21. It affected a lot of people, and now I'm wrestling with I might have done some real damage. That is a very compelling narrative for a documentary, whether you agree with his ultimate conclusion. But it ends with him and his family and friends at a long table in church, breaking bread, having dinner together, basically a Last Supper type scenario. And Harris reaffirms his faith, and he believes in biblical relationships and making God the center of everything, but he no longer agrees in his man-made system, and that's why he was discontinuing the book. I thought it was a very good movie. Now, that ending message might be one of the problems, because it does put the film distributors in a very awkward position. A very awkward position in the sense that, yeah, they are promoting this movie that, technically, theologically, if you believe this, if you're a Christian, it does say the things it does need to be said. However, it is being said by someone who's now claiming not to be a Christian, and that becomes a problem. And for that matter, I mean, the lead singer of Skillet pretty much said it best, and he was addressing Joshua Harris and the Hillsong writer from Australia. I forget what his name. I think his name was Marty, where they were both like showing that they had a lack of faith or they were struggling with it. And the lead singer from Skillet actually not only said, "Hey, I think it's our job as Christians to not only hold you accountable for what is going on, but hey, you've been spending years saying you need to follow us doing this, and now you're saying." We don't know what we're talking about. We don't believe that. So now we want you to follow us down this new path. Yeah, that's crazy. That's crazy. Like, you didn't know what you were talking about before. Why should we follow you now? And that's something, by the way, that sites like this site, the Friendly Atheist, of course, miss all together. But, we'll talk about it in a moment. I'm getting ahead of myself. Also, the statement is true in the sense that they did not consult the filmmakers, because the person who directed this, Jessica, I believe her name was, Jessica Van something, she admitted she was completely blindsided by what Josh ended up doing, and admitted that she would be making the film available for free on YouTube, which seems like it would be easier to do. Penn added that the rights would be returned to the filmmaker, and the film would still be available on some platforms, presumably due to existing contracts. Of course. It's a Christian company, so it makes sense why they might not wish to promote it, but their announcement also makes clear that they saw this film as etched in stone, not a snapshot in Harris's life. They could have easily distributed it by spinning it as a controversial issue that is still being debated in evangelical circles. Instead, they chose to bail the moment Harris turned out to be more complex than they had hoped. This is what I don't like about some of the, atheistic views on this thing. The silver lining may be that it sounds like much of the intended audience is no longer interested in the film anyway. That's one way to drum up publicity for a film no one really wants to see. Act like it's too toxic for your taste. No, no. That's not how this works. Here's the thing. I don't believe that they're discontinuing the film because they feel this was etched in stone. Actually, I think a woman wrote this article. Her name's Sarah, I believe. Lady. I don't think it's because this movie, they felt his words were etched in stone. It's because as a Christian company, they are publishing something, and they have to stand by the values in it. If they are publishing something from a guy who in this movie says, God is the way, God is the answer, you need God in the center of your life for all relationships and marriages. And then out in the world, he's saying he no longer believes that creates a problem. I mean, here's the thing. I'm assuming that you're a Darwinist. Like, would it make sense for, Charles Darwin to write this whole evolutionary thesis about the Galapagos Islands, and for him to say, like, oh, but by the way, God still exists. Now, personally, I believe you can have evolution and God. I don't know if it's likely. It gets really complicated at that point. I believe God can make the world however he chooses to. But Charles Darwin wrote the theory of evolution because he effectively did not believe in God. He felt that the earth had created itself, and he looked for an answer, and he believes he found that answer. But would he put in that book, like, by the way, found this whole process that, disproves God exists, publishes it, and then starts going around going like, well, actually, God does exist. I made the whole thing up. Would you not pull that from publication? Don't answer that. So, anyway, perhaps there will be another documentary in a few years about what inspired Harris to leave the faith. Oh, no doubt. There is going to be a book. There is going to be a podcast. I believe there will be another movie. If you think Josh Harris isn't doing this to make some money, to get some of his fame back, you are crazy. He has become a marketer. His whole thing is, I tell stories. And that's what he's doing right now. He's telling another story, and he will continue with that. Hopefully the distributor will be a company that understands even the perspectives of documentary subjects can change over time. Well, again, they understand the perspective changes. That's why they said up here, personally, we wish Josh the best. We know he is searching for answers. But he was not transparent about them, and he did not give them the heads up. And again, if they can't be, at least from their perspective, they can't be selling a movie that basically says one thing and their star subject of the film is out there saying another. That creates some problems, at least for them. I mean, Christians want to typically be as consistent as they possibly can. It makes sense. Like, that's why you have different denominations. It's like, hey, these are our core beliefs. Do you agree with them or not? Because, it's a very personal thing when you commit to God and Jesus, and if you commit to a church, you want to make sure that you are on the same page. And, I mean, there can be an argument to be made like, well, if it is one true God, why do they have different denominations? Why is it like, well, why can Christians say, I believe in this form of gospel, but not this form of gospel? Yeah, that is a very complicated matter. It really is. And we don't have time to really discuss that. However, this company, their position is clearly, very clearly, God is still to remain the center of relationships. That's how the movie ended. That is the stance that they stand behind, and Joshua Harris no longer believes in that. And yeah, there probably was a business decision. They had mentioned that a lot of DVDs had been sent back. So yeah, there's probably going to be taking a financial loss. They might be giving those things away at the Goodwill store. You never know. I mean, it's not going to affect Harris very much because he wasn't taking money for it anyway. He wasn't. So from his perspective, there's no use crying over spilt milk. Now, the filmmaker who owns it, she said she will be giving away the movie for free on YouTube, and considering the monetization, that might be the best thing for her. And she can also add like an intro and maybe an epilogue about many of the things that happened after the film was released. I still think this is a good, valid movie, probably more valid and more important for Christians to watch now, considering Joshua Harris's apostasy. So, yeah, I'm a little disappointed that they halted the promotion and distribution of the film as well. I completely understand it. I wish they hadn't done that. I get annoyed when people who have no faith don't understand that, hey, it's just about being consistent, and it's about, what message do you want to send? And look, this person, they have a message they want to send. I mean, and I've seen, by the way, non-religious people who criticize religious organizations for what they consider throwing people under the bus, and yet I've seen their atheist scientists eat each other when a new theory comes out and they can't agree if that's actually scientific or not. So, you know what? Tomato, potato, whatever. We all want to think we're right, and we want to criticize the person who we think is wrong. And that's wrong regardless whether you're Christian, atheist, Catholic, Hindu, Muslim, whatever. That's my personal thoughts on it anyway. And now I am going to leave the question to you. Have any of you seen I Survived, I Kissed Dating Goodbye? What do you think? Do you think this company is right to withdraw the movie from distribution, or do you think they're wrong? I would love to know, regardless what religious affiliation you are. So comment below, like, favorite, share, subscribe. If you enjoy my videos, consider becoming a Patreon member. It's totally optional, of course, but even as little as $1 a month goes a long way to helping the channel run smoothly, and you get access to my Patreon's exclusive blog. And as always, flame responsibly. Have a good one.